Hey there everybody in Internet Land, Dave Adams here with Budget Audiophile. And today we're taking a look at Poltergeist, the 2015 version, not the 1982 version. So what is this movie all about? Well, I don't want to go into too much detail about the movie because it's exactly the same as it was back in 1982. And if you've been in the horror movie game as long as I have, you know everything there is to know about Poltergeist. It's a classic, it's timeless, it's legendary, it's really good, and it's super scary. So first off, let's talk about how this isn't like a reimagining or a retelling. This is a full-on remake, reboot. It's the same story. So there won't be a whole lot of new things. Although there are some new things added, it's the same exact story, almost beat for beat, line for line. It literally is just the 1982 version, just a bit more modernized. So instead of Griffin, the little boy, reading a book in the back of a car, he has an iPad and he's playing a game. And the oldest girl, the oldest daughter, instead of her getting upset because of the privacy of her room, though that kind of does happen, she's getting upset because someone has her phone or because someone can get access to her phone. And it's little things like that, and it's a little cringy in that regard, but for the most part, it's actually done pretty well. Well, you know, for a reboot. So with all that out of the way, let's just jump right into the visuals of this thing. So as I alluded to earlier, this movie's actually kind of impressive when it comes to the visuals. Now, there are a few scenes, especially towards the end, where the CGI makes itself pretty apparent. It's as if they were trying a bit too hard to make something seem realistic, and in that, it kind of falls on its face and comes across as, well, computer generated. But you know, for me, it really wasn't that distracting. I heard a lot of people complaining about it as if it was just completely pulling you out of the movie, but I didn't find it to be the case. Even on a big 125-inch screen, I was with the movie 100% the whole way through, and the few scenes where the CGI kind of came through, I just kind of wrote it off as, well, it's a movie from 2015, and a horror movie at that. I mean, to be completely honest with you, if it's your first time watching it and you're sitting down and just watching the movie trying to enjoy it, you won't even notice the CGI. It isn't until you actually get analytical and start watching the scenes and start paying attention to the things going on to say, oh, I don't know, write a review, that you do notice those things. So with all of that, it is properly updated. The visuals are up to date from 1982 to 2015 at the time. And to be honest with you, there really are a lot of on-screen things that are downright terrifying and chilling, like to the bone chilling. And that's not to say there weren't, you know, some jump scares and pop-ups that really did try to, you know, get you like, brah! Like, no, that's not scary. Please stop yelling at the screen. I don't find that to be terrifying at all. However, it doesn't really rely on those jump scares to make the movie scary. There are genuinely terrifying scenes that are just purely atmospheric, whether it be the tone or the silence, or, you know, of all things, and then a sudden little bink noise that, you know, a toy makes or something like that. It's really scary. But you know what, that comes with the territory. This is a remake of an award-winning film, so it's going to have a lot of those award-winning elements within it, whether it be proper pacing, you know, great use of angles and lighting, shadow effects, which I'll get into in a bit. It all comes together almost seamlessly in a way that really does do a great job at conveying horror and terror to the audience, at least in my opinion, you know. So visually, what I think would stood out to me most was probably the way it uses the lighting and the color palettes throughout the movie. Unlike Pulse, it doesn't just have a blue wash over the entire movie. There are warm tones, there are grayish tones like I talked about in the last review, and overall it gives a sense of fullness throughout the entire movie to where you know the director wasn't just relying on one gimmick or one filter to kind of convey a message. And seriously, like in regards to the lighting, it really got under my skin and gave me proper goosebumps, and there aren't a lot of movies that do that to me. Like serious hair standing on the back of your neck when a shadow passes through the room and you're not sure if, because of the way the scene is lit, if that's actually something that was put on screen or if that's just your brain playing tricks with you. It really does do that to you throughout the entirety of this movie. I think you should really check this out if you're into like on-screen scares and on-screen terrifying moments, that it is what is on the screen that's terrifying you, not some sort of pop-up or loud noise. It's something in the background that you're not quite sure if it's supposed to be there. It'll get you. Actually, as an aside, here's a fun fact for you. I actually couldn't write the script to this review my first time watching through it because I was too busy watching the movie. It really did pull me in that much. I opened my laptop, pulled up a document page, and literally couldn't even get the first word down. I just closed my laptop and watched the movie. Then I watched it again. And a lot of that draw-in comes from our next point, the atmospheric sounds and surround effects. So these are the sounds that come out of your bed layer. You know, the main 7 speakers in your theater. Well, in a 7.1 or more setup. And when it comes to sound effects, creaks and moans and groans and screams and footsteps overhead, this movie does a fantastic job with it, and the sound engineers and sound designers deserve a lot of credit. Truly chilling, truly just nerve-rattling. I'm still getting goosebumps just thinking about it the first time I heard those overhead footsteps, even though it was upscaled because this is just a 7.1 soundscape. One of the things that really does stand out to me is throughout the entire movie, because the house they move into is located right next to this gigantic, overly powered power grid, like this huge electrical grid type thing with antennas and power lines. There's this electrical hum, very low, very faint throughout the entire movie. And with that, you hear the occasional rise and fall of electrical static and that hiss that comes with how you imagine electricity would sound flowing through the air, crackling at 50,000 volts. And it's just everywhere, but it's very faint and in the background, and the attention that they drew to that and the fact that that's there really just took it over the top for me. It's just absolutely fantastic that much attention to detail was put into the sound design to really appeal to people like myself and like you who really pay attention to stuff like that. But even aside from the ambient sound effects, the main sound effects that you hear, again, the vocals are perfectly placed throughout the entire movie. Every time the camera cuts to an individual, you hear the sound coming from the center channel strong, and as the camera moves or shifts from that person, where your brain tells you that person is where the sound is coming from. Somehow they managed to place a voice where there is no speaker, and that truly is, it's magic. It's work of the devil. I don't know how they do it. And it's not just a dialogue. Every single sound has so much attention to detail paid to it. They seamlessly move from speaker to speaker as the camera pans around, or as you travel through the house, or as you travel across whatever's on screen. The sound moves in the way you think it should. So if the camera moves over a car, the engine literally travels underneath you to the back of the stage. And as it travels back, the engine noise travels all the way forward across the screen into your face. And it's just fantastic. Seriously, there are a couple of scenes where I expected to turn around and see what was on screen behind me. So with that, you'll do all the tropey cliche things. You'll have the jumps, you'll wince, you'll cringe. It's crazy how these sounds play into the movie and how well the sound designers did their job for this. A scene that comes to mind in that regard is there's a tree scene, the famous tree scene, where the branch scrapes across the glass, and I literally cringed and winced as the little tendrils of the branch were just scraping across the glass, cutting into it. It really hurt, but it was so cool that it was able to do that to me. Seriously, guys, this is a reference quality audio track that deserves to be watched and watched again and shared with your friends and family. And when I say reference, I don't mean in hyperbole reference. I mean literally this movie wants to be played at reference volumes. It really is so good. And the only thing that's better than the surround and atmospheric tracks is the bass. So when it comes to bass, this movie isn't in a league of its own. It's in an orbit all by itself around its own black hole. I sincerely cannot think of a single movie that utilizes bass in the quantity and quality throughout the entirety of the movie like this movie does. And I've seriously watched hundreds of movies in my theater, and this has to be in my top 10 bass movies of all time. Like, seriously, it is difficult to put into words just how much bass and how good it is. It's not just loud, it's not just deep. It is all of the above, but it's clean, distortion-free bass that just rattles your bones. And a perfect example of how much bass there is throughout the movie, normally when I'm writing these scripts, I take a little side note panel and I write down different scenes to use when I cut to the theater and you can watch the camera and watch the subwoofers doing their flex thing. I normally have a list. The list for this is so long that I had to actually cut it back and decide out of that list what to use. Honestly, guys, from the trailers to the end credits, this movie does not let up. The last episode, we talked about Pulse, and Pulse hit really hard from, say, 25 hertz to 45 hertz. It really let you know it was in your theater. Poltergeist 2015 wants you to know it's in your house. It's not just the standard 20 hertz and above stuff. It's getting down into the ULF, or the ultra low frequencies. And this movie, in my opinion, hits the hardest between 8 hertz and 17 hertz. It's one of those things where you're watching it and you cannot believe how much bass is happening at the time. So when the scene is over, you immediately rewind it and watch it again, and you just stare with your jaw on the floor. A fun little anecdote that I'll tell you is this movie hits 15 hertz so hard that my theater was literally pressurizing and depressurizing so much that you could hear the house settling on the foundation. You could hear the cracks and crinkles in the drywall as the whole house was settling back down on itself. That's just something I've never experienced. I can't wait for you to experience this in your theater. If you don't have this movie, for the bass alone, I would go pick it up. But let's see if it's actually worth buying as a movie in and of itself. But before we do that, let's jump down to the theater and let's watch some subwoofers flex around. And I think you guys are really going to like this one, because normally at -20, where I normally watch movies, my 18s do not break a sweat. Poltergeist 2015 moves my subwoofers like not many other movies have throughout the entirety of the movie. I can think of literally one other movie that has moved my subs like this, and it only does it in the very beginning of the movie. So what we're going to do is jump down there, and because I can't decide on 1 or 2 clips, we're going to play a bunch of them, and we're just going to watch a bunch of subwoofers doing their thing for a few minutes. Hope you guys like bass. I know I do. Oh no.
Something stupid. Isn't that why you left me?
Harrigan, please.
They're never gonna let this family go. I'm tired of faking it for the cameras, Brooke. I'm the only one left who can lead those souls into the light. You know that.
Wait. You don't have to do this.
I know. I want to.
Wait, how will I know that you've made it back?
I think of something. Bye, Brooke.
No, don't do something stupid.
Oh, something stupid. Isn't that why you left me?
Harrigan, please.
They're never gonna let this family go. I'm tired of faking it for the cameras, Brooke. I'm the only one left who can lead those souls into the light. You know that.
You don't have to do this.
I know. I want to.
Wait, how will I know that you've made it back?
I think of something. Bye, Brooke. Go of it, we'll never find our way back.
What's going on?
That was crazy, right? I told you, it is borderline obscene the way these subwoofers move around because of this movie. And again, if I wanted to highlight every big bass scene in that movie, I would wind up just showing you the entirety of the film. And I'm convinced if you wind up picking up this movie and you put it in your theater and you crank it up, your subs will love you. Or they'll hate you. I'm really not sure. I do know that your significant other and your neighbors will absolutely hate you, and that's a Budget Audiophile guarantee. This movie is absolutely silly. It doesn't care what you think. It doesn't care what your neighbors think. It only cares what it wants, and what it wants is to get inside your soul and rearrange your internal organs. I know it sounds like I'm belaboring a point, but it cannot be overstated how good the bass in this movie is. And I mean sincerely. Forget Aquaman, forget Godzilla, forget Kong, forget Live, Die, Repeat. Well, actually, don't forget Live, Die, Repeat, because that intro is seriously good. But it is just the intro. It's not the whole movie. This movie is absolutely insatiable in the way it tries to deliver bass to you. And it just reaches in and it tries to move your brain matter around from the front to the back. And it's crazy. Moving forward, I think Poltergeist 2015, for the foreseeable future at least, is going to be the reference movie that I go to whenever I want to demo my theater or test out new subs. And with that, let's go ahead and jump right into the home theater score. First up, we have the visuals. And I really like the way this movie looks a lot. It looks really good. It doesn't always do the best job at conveying visually what the director was trying to put into your skull, but overall I think it does a fantastic job. And I give it a 21 out of 25. Next, we're going to take a look at the surround and atmospheric effects. That's everything from the dialogue to the footsteps, creaks, and groans. And as you heard me laud about, this movie does it in spades. It gets the job done superbly. The only demerit I can possibly give it is that it's a 7.1 track, and even though 7.1 is really good, this movie begged for an Atmos track. The upscaling is really good. Like I said, when they had the overhead footsteps, my processor put those footsteps directly above me, and I thought there was somebody walking above me upstairs. But discrete Atmos would have just been the icing on the cake, what that movie needs. That said, the 7.1 DTS HD Master audio track on this is superb, and I give it a 23 out of 25. Bass, and you probably already see where this is going. Like I said earlier, this is my new standard. Not my gold standard. This is my diamond standard. There literally is nothing like it I have ever watched in the hundreds, if not nearly thousands of movies that I've watched in my theater. If your theater is capable of going flat down to 10 hertz, you're going to have a whole new appreciation for this movie that your average viewer just won't get. And it's because the sound engineers and sound designers were thinking about you when they made this movie. And with that, the bass track in Poltergeist 2015 earns a perfect and well-deserved 25 out of 25. And lastly, let's talk about the it factor. And no, despite this movie having clowns in it, it's not about clowns. The it factor is that thing that just keeps you coming back. You know, whether it be an on-screen chemistry that you really got drawn into, the charisma of a character, the storyline, the connection to the plot, whatever it is about a movie that makes you keep coming back, the it factor is that. And for me, the mashup between the bass and the atmospheric and surround effects and the way the dialogue pops off the screen and the way the sounds hit everywhere and the creepy lighting and the chilling shadows and the color palette choices, this movie will keep me coming back time and time again. I'll watch it by myself, I'll demo it with friends, I'll demo it with family. I want to show the world this movie and how it sounds with properly calibrated big subs. The only thing that's missing for me is that Atmos track, and this movie gets a well-deserved 24 out of 25. And if you add those all up, you get a very high 93 out of 100, which I feel will be very hard to beat for any movie we review going forward. Are there better movies to watch? Absolutely. Especially if you're not into horror. Heck, I can think of 10 movies off the top of my head, 3 of which are horror movies that have better acting, better emotion, better character development, better dialogue than this movie will ever have in any scenario. But I'm really having a tough time thinking of a movie more deserving of such a high home theater score. And with that, thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you really enjoyed this one. I know I did. I loved watching this movie. In fact, when I'm done editing this, I'm probably going to go watch it again. So do me a big favor. If you can, click that like button, click subscribe if you want to. If not, hey, click it anyway. It really helps out a lot. And if you want to share us on your social media, that'd be super awesome of you to do. Well, that's it for me. I'm David Adams once again with Budget Audiophile. We'll see you guys next time. Poltergeist. Hey there, everybody in Internetland. David Adams here with Budget Audiophile. And you know what? I forgot the Blu-ray case.